It can be anything as long as it's one penny in the jar, right? Like we don't have to go all in at one time. It's just a baby step forward. And if you do that, the vision will become more clear. Like you don't have to have all the answers right now.
Welcome to the Travel Not to Escape podcast. I'm your host, Jolene on the Go, solo female traveler and creative entrepreneur. Think of me as your skydive instructor, empowering you to take the leap into solo travel to push past your fears and transform your life. Join me every Tuesday as we explore the world of solo travel with purpose and discover how you can use it for your personal transformation, learn how to make meaningful connections around the world, and reignite your spirit of play. We aren't just talking about traveling to find ourselves anymore. We're all about doing the work to understand who we authentically are, breaking through our limiting beliefs, and taking the leaps to manifest lives we are excited about. Through interviews, solo episodes, meditations, each episode is packed with practical tips, strategies, and inspiring stories from guests who have transformed their lives through solo travel. Whether you're a seasoned traveler or just starting out on your journey, the Travel Not to Escape podcast is here to inspire and empower you to solo travel with purpose. Strap on your helmet. We're about to jump headfirst into the journey of a lifetime. Are you ready? Let's go. Thank you for joining today's episode. I'm so excited to share my interview with you all. It is with Alex Trevisan, who is a mindset and imposter syndrome coach. She works with women who are ready to take action to live their most fulfilling lives by helping them harness their mindset, overcome imposter syndrome, and build a successful business as a spiritual entrepreneur. In our interview, she shares her journey of leaving her private chiropractic office behind to create her own coaching business and travel the world. Her story is so empowering because she shares how she did this with small, actionable steps. So we delve deep into discussions about money mindset, limiting beliefs, and really the importance of trusting oneself in this journey. So let's dive into the episode. Thank you so much, Alex, for joining me as a guest today. I'm so excited to have you. For everyone listening today, Alex and I actually met while, actually it was my first week in Bali. I think also like your first first couple weeks in Bali. And we met through Outpost, which is a co-working, co-living company that runs offices and co-lives here in Ubud and in Canggu. So it was at a meetup event that we met up. And we realized we had a lot in common. And Alex is doing such amazing things as a mindset and imposter syndrome coach. So I'm so excited to have you on today to chat about your journey through solo traveling and all the transitions and transformations that you've had. So welcome.
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Yay. And then I wanted to start off today's episode with, what is your favorite childhood activity?
So a few come to mind, but I think the one that's most pressing is like trying new tricks on the trampoline. Like we had a trampoline and I was into kind of like cheerleading, gymnastics, doing flips. And so my friends and me and my siblings and me would always be on the trampoline, just trying new tricks, like flipping and handstanding and things like that.
I love that. So I ask because there's 8 different types of play personalities, and each
Mm.
one can give you an insight into how people can use their play style to then, as an adult, incorporate more meaning and be more fulfilled in your life. And it also is a way to understand how someone kind of enjoys the world around them, like what feels like play to them. So as part of that, one of the play styles is the kinesthetic. I can never say it right. Kinesthetic.
Yes,
So it's all
kinesthetic.
about, yes, exactly. It's all about being in your body and exploring the world through your
Mm.
body and just running around, jumping on a trampoline. Yeah, it kind of is helping me understand people through the lens of what their play style is, and then also like whether that ties into, this seeking of more travel in their life or seeking the different types of connections that they have in their life. So thank you for sharing that. I think we can dive into your play a little bit towards the end of the episode. But let's take a step back and dive into your background. Can you tell me a bit about, anything about your background and what your experience is with solo travel?
Yeah, so traditionally, I guess professionally, my education and my background is in chiropractic. I studied psychology and religion in undergrad and naturally led into the more kinesthetic path of being in the body and being a chiropractor and in that healthcare focus. And it's funny because I had a career change into being an online coach and supporting people in their identity, mindset, anxiety work, and becoming the person to build their business and to follow their dreams and to say yes. And a lot of that was driven from the undertone of my desire to travel. And I traveled internationally for the first time pretty young. I was 7, and I went to Paris with my grandma and my godmother, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, like I'm obsessed. I want to be in Paris, lunch in the Eiffel Tower, like super young, super impressionable."
Yeah.
And I come from a family where, my grandparents and aunts and uncles and everything, like pretty well traveled, so it's pretty normalized pretty young for me. And I spent my senior year, part of my senior year in Cape Town, South Africa, studying abroad, which was kind of my entry portal into traveling by myself, even though it was in a container of studying abroad. And so these prior experiences of being exposed to Europe from a young age, and then while I was still studying, living internationally solo, were in the back of my mind as I was following my career and professional trajectory. And as a chiropractor, I just felt so, I mean, there's a whole story with that, but I felt so confined and trapped because I'm like, I can't make money and also run my business. Like if I travel, like I have to be physically present to make money. And as a chiropractor, I mean, yeah, I could do the whole online thing, chiropractic, but really have to touch people. And so there was just this subconscious or deep, deep whisper that was like, I want to be free. I want to be international. I want to be a digital nomad. And I think that called on my experiences of former travel, and slowly one thing led to another, which led to me having a career change and now living in Bali as a coach and meeting you and being in this
Yeah.
conversation.
It's amazing how everything kind of works out and eventually you all get there. But yeah, there's a lot of changes that you kind of have to go through in that process. And it sounds
Yeah.
like you had to let go a lot of things about, like what you originally wanted and planned for your life in order to follow something that was calling you even more. Was that digital nomad lifestyle like how did you first hear about that and like start wanting that for yourself?
So I was in chiropractic school and I was going through like a really bad like anxiety depression episode. And that was kind of the second time that I had been experiencing like mental health crisis. And I was in grad school, so I was doing my thing, like what I had to do professionally and studying and whatnot. But I was very, very in a dark, dysregulated place internally. And that kind of led me to exploring, I guess, alternative modalities of healing, you could say. I tried all the Western stuff and whatnot, and I was already in a bit more of an esoteric profession as a chiropractor. But I went into like law of attraction and spirituality and like full woo woo. And then I
Yeah.
found this podcast. It's called The Lively Show. I don't really listen to it anymore, but it was like totally my gateway to everything. And she just ran a podcast and talked about like spirituality and law of attraction and coached people online and was living as a nomad. And I was like, what? Like people do this? Like this is amazing. I'm like, this is obviously what I'm supposed to be doing. Meanwhile, I'm like dumping out grad school loans and my time and
Yeah.
getting a doctorate. But at the same time, I was like, I'm obsessed with this. Like I bought all of her courses. I'm listening to this show every day. And it was really finding that podcast that was the first permission slip to say, oh, this is possible. Like, one, you can live abroad solo, and two, you can make money doing it, and three, you can help people at the same time while you're serving your own desires to live abroad and being financially compensated for it. Like, you could be of service in that sort of way that's non-traditional. And so honestly, finding that podcast was like completely opened my eyes to living abroad, making money abroad, and having a career change.
Oh, that's amazing. And I mean, I just started this podcast, so that's the dream is to be able to like
Serendipity.
impact
Yeah.
someone. Yeah, exactly. To like find that person that like is looking for those words and just saying like, yes, like whatever you're feeling, that's like okay. And it's okay to want more. And these are the things that you can do outside of the traditional path that we're all taught to believe that we have to do. And I think it's like super brave for you to start to want more and then seek that, even diving in deep to like something that is considered woo woo, I think, right? While you were in chiropractic school. Were you traveling at all during that period, or were you mostly focused on grad school and just kind of like working on your career?
I'm trying to think. I definitely have done more international trips, and I'm trying to think where it fell into the scope of me traveling. I think I went to Colombia while I was in chiropractic school, and then like in between one of my semesters, and then I think I did most of my other traveling once I had graduated. Because it was pretty back to back. We got like 10 days or 2 weeks off in between semesters. So they were trimesters. But I was in Colombia for a portion of that time.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I know. It's like when you're in school and or like working, there's not really, especially in the US, there's not really time
Yeah,
that you could just go off and travel. So you end up having these like little short stints, getting a taste maybe of that life that you had wanted, and then having to come back and back into the grind.
exactly. Yeah.
Were you
Which
solo traveling during those times, or was it with friends?
No, it was my sister was living there, in South America. She was solo traveling, so maybe she also was a permission slip for me, but so I visited her in Colombia, and then all of the other times I traveled with friends, and I'd always traveled on holiday, and so it was very I feel like there's a different energy and vibe to that than working abroad and nomading or slow madding or whatever you wanna call it. So really being in Bali is my first full-blown solo travel experience outside of studying abroad, which I was solo, but I was held in a container a little bit more intimately through an international program.
Yeah, no, that makes I studied abroad as well, and it's like it gives you that first taste when you're so
Yeah,
young of like,
yeah,
oh, people are doing this, and it's okay for me to, go off on these adventures. But it's definitely a different pace. You're also much younger and like have a
yeah.
different intention in life.
Partying
Um,
more.
yeah, basically that. Staying in hostels.
Yeah,
You're not
different.
necessarily focused on how does this change my life? How can I
Yeah.
use this experience to grow? And so like as you were deciding on going to Bali, like what made that decision for you? Like what made it like why Bali and what drew you here?
I think I've been called to Bali for a while. I don't know when it started. I actually had a flight here during 2020 for my birthday, but COVID obviously it got canceled. So it's been on my mind for a while. I think anyone tapped into the spiritual conversation knows like Bali as a hub for a lot
Definitely.
of, especially Ubud, where we met. um, but there is a spiritual draw, I think, and then at the same time I was really as I was getting building my online business even more and anchoring into that identity more so than as a chiropractor and as a physician, I wanted to be surrounded by people with the same mindset and or similar like mindset, vision, and values as me. And
Yeah.
so in the States, I mean, I know a lot of people with super successful chiropractic businesses, also just people successful professionally as well. But like my vision of success didn't look like anyone around me. And I wanted to have more of that international kind of community and basis and not tied to a geographical location and expand my conversations and my network just across the globe. And I was like, where else are people doing that and having these conversations and building non-traditional formats for success? And I was like, I think they're in Bali. I was like, I think they're in Costa Rica, but I also think they're in Bali. And so I think that combined with the spiritual pull was just like perfect recipe.
Yeah, yeah, no, they're definitely in Bali. Yeah, they're
Yeah,
I've like
they're
traveled a
around.
lot of different places, and the concentration of solopreneurs here working
Yeah,
on their own passionful business, I have like not seen it anywhere else that I've been to. And it's like truly magical to be
yeah.
surrounded and just get that fuel from everyone around you. So you had the kind of idea of wanting to be a digital nomad. You already had the location in mind of where you wanted to go. So what does that look like between, being in your practice, having your own private chiropractic practice to now? There was a few years within that time period. Can you kind
Mm,
of dive in between what
yeah,
happened and how you went through that whole process? I mean, there's a lot you probably had to let go, say goodbye to.
yeah. Yeah, I think in the beginning, the biggest thing was like I was like, I wasted all this time, I wasted all this money, I wasted all this. It was not true at all. It's
It's
like
like
that
guilt. Yeah.
yeah. And I'm like, am I comfortable completely letting go of this, you know? And I hired my first coach during COVID, actually. And she really wanted me to be a coach. And I had so much resistance. Like, my ego was like, no, like, I have
Yeah.
a doctorate. Like, I'm not going to be a coach. Like, what are you saying? And I had a podcast. Actually, I started with a podcast because that was my portal, my gateway, as I mentioned earlier. And then I had like an online events company where I would host events in the online space. Again, it was during COVID. So online gathering became super normalized. And so I honestly didn't know what I was doing, but I knew that one, I was very unfulfilled as a chiropractor, not just because I was tied to a geographical location, but in the work I was doing was not fulfilling. Like, chiropractic never changed my life. It was a very logical, practical choice. Like, yeah, I could be authentic. I could be my own boss. I had my own practice. So I was an entrepreneur from the get-go, but I wasn't fulfilled by the work. And I had my own kind of emotional story in overcoming mental health and helping myself through spirituality and other healing modalities. And that's not a conversation you have in the chiropractic clinic. Like, people are like, my back hurts. And I'm like, well, like, there's physical pain is also a manifestation of other dysregulation. And, that it was just not a conducive environment for how I wanted to show up and serve and the demographic. And I was a sports medicine chiropractor. So I was having people like lift weights and build resilience and all that kind of thing. And so I think what really drove me to continue taking action, even though I didn't know what I was doing, was my desire to be fully expressed in how I wanted to show up for my service, and honestly use my own story and my own gifts and what lit me up in order to give back, and also in order to make money. Because I'm like, I can give back and make money as a chiropractor, but it doesn't light me up. And like, I deserve to feel lit up by my work, and my patients also deserve to receive treatment from someone who like it's inspired and lit up to serve in that sort of way. And it just wasn't happening. And so I was like, I don't know what I want to do, but I don't want to do this. And so I was like, okay, podcasts. I talked about spirituality. I talked about religion. I talked about all these like critical thinking, emotional intelligence stuff in the online event space. And naturally that flowed into coaching. And I kind of let go of my resistance, and I was into like spirituality coaching and helping kind of people find their identity in the spiritual space, and it not being so structured or so traditional. It's like, oh, I'm one religion, or oh, I'm one spirit, and just allowing, giving people permission to believe in what feels right for them. And then that led into kind of like passion and purpose coaching and like what lights you up, what charges you. And then that led into coaching spiritual entrepreneurs to go all in on the thing that they want to go all in on, because I'm like, well, if you found your spirituality, you found your passion, your zest, it's like, now you want to make money doing that, don't you? I'm like, yeah, like, that was my path. And so that whole journey was just, it was like a revealing or an unveiling, instead of like seeking and like it being and like figuring it out. It was always there, but I had to discover what it looked like for myself by just continually showing up for it, investing in myself, putting myself in rooms. I was always in a coaching container. I always had a coach. I was signing up for every free masterclass. Like, I was psycho. And I was just like, I'm going and in that direction. And it was really fueled by that desire for like, at first it was like, I don't want this, what I'm doing. And it was like a push away. And then as my vision became more and more clear of what I wanted and how I wanted to feel and show up, it became more of a pull towards the future vision. But it started of like, oh my God, if I stay here in this environment and this career, I'm going to be so unhappy, like
Yeah.
awful. And I think starting from like a fear place of what the future can look like is not bad. And that's like shamed a lot. And it's like, don't just do something because you hate where you are. It's like, well, maybe if you know in 5 years you're going to be miserable and like wanting to party every single weekend and just escape your reality, then like maybe that's enough to make a change until eventually you figure out what you do want, which was kind of my story. So I didn't know what it looked like, and it kind of revealed itself, and it continuously is.
Yeah, like everything changes always, all the time. And I think
Yes.
like there's such a resistance in the beginning because there's just so much unknown. It's like, kind of the idea of where you want to be, like digital nomad, Bali business, right? Kind of have that idea in mind. But you're like, oh, but I have a private practice physically, in LA, and all that gray area in the middle, it's so scary. And so many people look at that gray area and they're like, I want that, but I don't know where to start. And so you get frozen in this fear mode. And
Mhm.
it's really cool that you took all these like mini steps, right? You said you were obsessed with all these coaching programs, all these master classes, anything that you can get your hands on. And I think that that's such a great way to start, because you have to just be open with what's calling you. And
Mhm.
if like that, that resonates, that class or whatever book it is resonating, like it's really cool that you saw that and you're like, yeah, I'm going to listen to that. I'm going to read that. I'm going to be part of this group, because you kind of had that idea already in mind. Do you think that, like, had you not had that future vision already of what you wanted, it would have been like a longer path towards it? Or was it always kind of there for you? What are your thoughts on like future visioning?
Yeah, I think the more I have a mixed feelings on this because I think because honestly in the beginning I didn't know coach and I didn't know Bali. I just knew remote and I knew making money online and international. I was even more vague. And Bali
Yeah.
and coach didn't come till a little bit later. And so but as you continue to show up, you continue to figure it out. Like I think that there's a misconception that you need to know how to do things in order to, or like you need to have a profound level of clarity in order to like manifest it, because you literally just you learn by doing. Like you got to show up for it and you're like, "Oh, I don't really like this." And like I realized I didn't like having a podcast. So I was like, and I'm a motor mouth. I could talk all day, but I like I like being asked questions, not asking the questions. And I didn't know that, in the beginning because I was interviewing people. And so I learned by doing. And so I did have a vague vision, but it got more refined over time. And I do think at the end of the day, the more specific, the easier it is to manifest or to experience it in your reality. But I don't think that that pressure needs to be put on yourself, because once I knew Bali and once I knew, I was like, okay, I can put all my energy directed here and I'm making it happen. And this is what I'm doing, XYZ. But it takes whatever it takes in order to have that level of clarity. And so now that I'm in Bali, like my next level vision again is like super super vague. Like I don't have a specific vision for my next. I have some things with my business and my branding, but again it's starting off vague and it's going to get more specific as I show up for it. And I think that there's all these like myths about manifesting, like you need to know exactly the feeling, you need to know exactly the vision. And it's like if you're in a low vibe state or you're like feeling sad or confused or lost or frustrated, like don't gaslight yourself for like, oh, well, you need to know exactly, and now you're not good, like gonna get it. Like no, like you got to go vague when you can't go specific, and that's just as powerful. And then as you continue to show up for your vision, even if it's like I just don't know what I want, but I don't want this, then you continue to do whatever next step is right. Maybe that's listening to a podcast, maybe that's hiring a coach, maybe that's making just journaling on your who you want to help, or like what your life, like what you don't want, or it can be anything as long as it's one penny in the jar, right? Like we don't have to go all in at one time. It's just a baby step forward. And if you do that, the vision will become more clear. Like you don't have to have all the answers right now.
Yeah, oh, that's so beautiful. And also just like so releasing too. Like you don't have to have all the answers right now. I think that's just so empowering, because yeah, you get frozen and there's so many things that freeze you up in the beginning because everything just looks gray. Like you don't have
Mhm.
any clear path in mind. But yeah, the secret is it's like penny in a jar. Just keep putting
Mhm.
pennies there. It doesn't have to be a lot, but like one a day. And it really does become clearer. And then there's like this epiphany moment that you have like years down the line. And you're like, wow, like this is exactly where I'm supposed to be right now. And like, this is where I was before. And I didn't know how those pennies connected to each other, but now it forms
Exactly.
like this beautiful path. Yeah.
Exactly. I remember sitting in the living room of people that I went to chiropractic school with, and I was like telling them, I'm like, yeah, I'm going to live abroad and have online courses. And I literally had just gone through like 3.5 years of grad school with them. And they were like, what? Like, okay, you're crazy. And I was like, yeah, I don't know, but I'm just like, I'm going to do that. And they're like, okay, now I'm like doing it. But that was in, I don't know, like 2018 or something. And it's like, I could have never foreseen the timeline or
Yeah.
the steps that I would have taken to get there, but now I'm doing it and it's just like it's really wild. It's really crazy.
Yeah. And of those people, because that's the tough part too, sometimes is if you don't have people around you, and thankfully you had that, the podcast, you were surrounding yourself with people in different containers to let you know that that was possible. But not a lot of people have that, especially if they're surrounded by other
Mhm.
people that kind of had that more fixed mindset. What kind of, do you still keep in touch with them, and what were your support systems going through? Were there other people close to you that were cheering you on in this kind of letting go process?
Yeah, I feel like in general, I didn't experience like a lot of haters or a lot of people. I did like, oh, like you're crazy, like, but no one was like, you're dumb, like you can't do that, you know? And so I'm blessed in that regard. And also a lot of my friends, especially in chiropractic school, they're also entrepreneurs. And so they're just in a different industry, but there's an underlying like connection of I'm going to build something and I'm going to do it with like little capital, or like I'm going to learn how to get capital by like investors, or I'm going to build something that's going to be insanely successful. That's also an expression of who I am. And like for some of my friends, that's, chiropractic, that's supplement, that's online, biomechanical seminar stuff. And for me, it's more helping people follow their passion and make a living and living the life that they want to live and helping people in the way that they feel called to serve. And so I am lucky in the way that I have surrounded myself with people who have the underlying entrepreneurial energy. However, a lot of my community with that is in California. And so I went back to North Carolina, which is where I'm from. And that energy was like not there at all for me. And it was very, very traditional, 9 to 5, very like 401k benefits,
Yeah.
great health insurance, which is
Yeah.
wonderful if that's what you're called to. But that's when I decided to move to Bali for real, because I was like, I am so disconnected. Like my vision is unlike anyone I'm surrounded by. And I was like, the environment, it's almost like a negative feedback loop because you're constantly seeing feedback of the opposite of what you desire. And so, and I think I had to get to that space where I was more disconnected from my LA crew and from the people building their thing, even though it was in a different direction, and just be pushed against the wall by the fire of like, okay, this is not where you want to be, to finally actually make the decision of I'm going to leave. And I think sometimes that's what I mean. Like it's going to take whatever it takes or however long it takes until you internally get to that place to draw a line in the sand. And it's like, no, like I'm doing
Yeah.
this. And sometimes it's when it's like, okay, I can't take this anymore. So I have to make a move. And in Charlotte in North Carolina, I just really, really, I had great friendships, but professional like conversations and people with shared visions, I had none. And I was like, oh my God, like now I have to go to the mecca of
Yeah.
spiritual
Yeah.
entrepreneurs. I have to go to
Literally.
Bali now.
Yeah, just a complete
Yeah.
opposite of a vibe for sure. No, I feel that every time I go back to California or Chicago, where I did my most like corporate hustle grind, and
Mm,
everyone I knew there, still when I go back and meet them, it's like, what do you do? Where are you from? And then you go into conversation about introducing yourself as your title, and then that's the whole
yeah.
conversation. um but so what's the timeline look like between LA and North Carolina and finally giving up your practice?
So I left LA in I think early 2022. Yeah. So like January 2022. And then I went to Paris and then I road tripped home from California or back to
Oh, I
North
thought you were going to
Carolina.
say from Paris. I was like,
Oh
wait.
no, no. I was like, of course. I'm like, okay, I'm done with chiropractic. I'm going abroad. And
Yeah.
so and then I came back and I road tripped, and then what was that? What did I say? 2022. And so then I moved to Bali, or I actually started in Tunisia, so I started in Tunisia solo traveling August of 2023. So kind of a year and a half, because honestly, when I left LA, I wasn't like, "Oh, I'm gonna move abroad." Like, I knew it was in the back of my mind, but I was like, "Oh, maybe I'll move to New York, maybe I'll move to Charleston, maybe I'll move to Austin." I was sussing out all of these cities about where to live, and I think a lot of it was because I had debt and student loans, and I was like, "Oh, well, I can't, like, move abroad if I have debt." And then I was having a call with someone who's in my coaching container, or was at the time, and we just have accountability calls, like, me and her once a
Oh, I
week,
love that.
and she was moving to Thailand, and she was like, and I was like, "Yeah, like, I really wanna move to Bali, but, like, I can't not because like, I have debt." And she was like, why? Like, why can't you? And I was like, oh, I guess I can. And it was really weird. I like clicked in that moment. I was like, oh, I'm moving to Bali. Like, I don't have to wait for my student loans to go away, like they're gonna
Yeah,
follow. And it was this weird because again, I had the vision, but I didn't give
know
myself
how.
permission to execute on it. So that's why I think sometimes like a sounding board, mentorship, being in conversation is so powerful because people can see things that you can't see. So it took me like
Yeah,
a year and a half, but one I think I had that conversation in March and then I left in August. And I was like, I'm moving to Bali. Like
done.
done. Give
Yeah,
my apartment up, sell my shit, bye.
yeah.
Let's go.
That's so empowering. I resonate with that so much because the student loan shackles are real, especially for
Oh
people
my
from the
God.
US. Like you sign up,
Yeah.
you sign all these loans at a very early age before no one teaches you how to read a master loan contract. Like no one teaches you what those you just sign your life away because it's either not go to school or go to school and you want to quote unquote succeed
Yeah.
and then you find yourself in your mid 20s literally overburdened by debt and thinking like is this going to be my life until I'm in my 60s, like 40 plus more years of just this. And if you're already at the point where you said you were where you're unhappy, that just seems like forever, like this is going to be my day in day out forever because of these student loans. And a lot of people just accept that. And I think
Yeah.
that that realization is that you were living in LA. I know how much rent prices are in LA. Like I lived
Yeah.
in California and Chicago and New York. Like the rent prices are minimum 2,000 a month
Yeah.
if you want a decent place in a location that is safe. And then it's wild when you realize that you could be living so much better and like the quality of life so much better in just not in the same cities that you were living in before. Like I think
Exactly.
in like Thailand, Bali, like, it is that geo arbitrage. But it's also like, figuring out what works for you and not being resigned to the fact that, oh yeah, this debt's gonna just haunt me until it's paid off. Because if you think about it, you're likely not going to pay it off in a time frame that will allow you to enjoy whatever it is that you're looking forward to anyway.
Yeah, and, like, my debt was, like, my entire personality. I was like, "Oh, well, I can't because 'cause I've debt," and, like, it's like I can't full wasn't allowing myself to fully enjoy life because I had debt, and one of my coaches, Amanda Francis, is, like, someone who normalizes has helped me, like, do identity work around debt, but she's like, "Debt is just, like, a choice to pay something off over time, like, what if you just
Hmm.
made it no thing and you're making all your payments on time and you're
Hmm.
just paying something off over time and you stop shaming yourself for it and you still let
Yeah.
yourself feel abundant and open and available to receive despite that, like how can you hold the identity where you you stop living in guilt and shame, and it's like
Hmm.
you have to put yourself out there and put yourself in particular rooms to even get immersed in these conversations to eventually
Yeah.
change your life because mainstream narrative is like you're wrong, you're bad, you're inferior, you're inadequate because
Yeah.
you have debt and you made poor choices and you're irresponsible, and it's like, well, cool, that's going to motivate me to like be I don't
Yeah.
know, like make better choices, like it's like shaming
Yeah.
someone into change instead of like loving someone into evolution. And so
Yeah.
I think it's just a different mindset, and there's a lot of conversation around money mindset that goes into like my coaching and coaching in general. And if
Yeah.
you want to have a career change, if you want to move abroad, because your relationship with money has to be worked on if you're gonna, do
It's so
something that
important.
lights up your soul. Yeah.
Yeah, you can't create an abundant lifestyle if you're coming from a place of lack. And that I didn't
Hmm.
realize because I
Hmm.
was there, I was making six figures and
Hmm.
doing all the spreadsheets to calculate at
Hmm.
what point am I going to pay off this debt and then I'll
Hmm.
be able to do this. And then once I
Hmm.
realized there's another answer and it's not just let me put this, you know, time frame on this and then do things afterwards. It's like once I realized there was other perspectives or other answers and then I didn't have to come from this place of lack, like I've called in so much more abundance into my life because of that. And it's like how do you, so I guess like going into that, like what are some ways that people can just start with that abundant mindset? Like what's like the first 2 3 steps to start kind of reframing money in their lives so that they can make these large changes that you did?
I think the first thing I do this thing called like redefining it with one of my mentors. And I think the first thing is like write down whatever the word is, like money or debt. Money's a good one, but debt maybe, or investing, wherever you're at on like the money journey. And just write down money and just write down everything that comes to mind, right? Like scary, uncertain, don't know how to make it, not good at it, can't manage it, all word vomit, all of that. And then anything that you comes up, feel it in your body. And so this is a whole conversation on kind of somatics and back to the kinesthetics, but like
Yeah,
feeling
yeah.
like you feel where you feel this in your body. And there's so many different modalities to do this, and I have a free training on it. But like say you feel it, I don't know, under like your left chest, or say you feel it like in your temple, or you feel it in the pit of your stomach, and you can tap on it, you can give it a color, you can give it a shape, but like literally just feel it, and like don't fight it, and just allow yourself to feel it, feel it, feel it, until the feeling is eventually like a little bit subdued. It's not as intense, and you're just feeling that negativity in your body. Negativity, it's just an experience. I did air
Hmm.
quotes there. But
Yeah.
and then after that, write down the same word money and redefine how you want to experience that, how you want to feel that. And so, maybe that's like it's abundant, it's all the time, it's of course, it's duh, it's part of who I am, it's a natural byproduct of me expressing myself, it's easy, it's around me, it's I know what to do with it, whatever, right? And then you start like anchoring into your new definition around money, because if you're out here saying like I want to make money, or money, like I have to manage my money, but your definition of money is it's hard, it's confusing, it's I'm bad at it, it's like of course you're blocking that in your experience,
Yeah.
because your definition of it is rooted in anxiety and lack, right? And you
Yeah.
can't affirm yourself and envision yourself into the future, into the desired outcome and experience with money, if you don't feel what's present right now. So you
Mm.
have to be honest about how you actually feel and what the stories are around money. And then you have to
Yeah.
feel it in your body to clear it through your system. It's like if your stomach hurts and you need to burp, and you don't let yourself burp, like you're just sitting there with stomach pain. Like if you just burped and you release the gas, like, okay, well, now I'm good. Like I can take a nap now. It's like the same thing with all this money trauma. It's like in your body, and until you literally let yourself feel it, it's stuck in there like gas, and like, like a stomach ache or whatever. And so
Yeah.
a lot of it is by understanding your current definition of money or debt or whatever, feeling it in your body, and then redefining it and making a decision to say, this is how my money experience gets to be. And of course, there's a way more in depth
Yeah.
version to do that, but that's the
Oh, that's a
bread
good
and
start.
butter. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good start because a lot of us just kind of think like, oh, it is something I have to be good at. I have to look at my finances. I have to be good at finances. Such a broad term. What does that actually
Yeah.
mean for you? And then as you were saying, like with the burping analogy, it's like, okay, then what actually caused you to burp? Like, where did
Hmm.
that gas buildup come from? And like, whose voices are those when you think about money and like money is hard? You should work hard for money. And working is not supposed to be fun. Working is supposed to bring food to the table. Like, who are those voices coming from? Are those your voices, or where did they start coming into your mind and being part of your definition? Because I think a lot of us also don't take that step back and ask like, what's the source? And you'll be
Hmm.
surprised, it's like, oh wow, my mom always said that actually, or
Hmm.
like, this is because I grew up this way, or whatever it was kind of growing up. um it sticks with you until you allow yourself to feel it, to question it, and then finally let it go and go into your own definition.
Yeah, and it's like remembering, like we are basically just an amoeba that can
Yeah.
shape shift into anything, and we've been
Yeah.
shape shifted by our family styles, by the media, by society, by the education system, by literally whatever. Like anything you've been
Hmm.
exposed to has influenced your own belief systems, and that it's like that doesn't matter. Like we don't need to cry about that. Like yeah, if you need to cry, cry, amazing,
Hmm.
somatic release, and then like keep going. And so it's like we have been influenced in whatever way we have been influenced. And it's merely a recognition of that. And then remembering, oh, well, I can actually change my beliefs. I can change the way my
Hmm.
amoeba is functioning. And instead of like, oh, yeah, money has to be hard, or like money's the root of all evil, or whatever I'm holding on to deep down, I get to feel that, clear it, and then redecide and then reshape my experience around
Hmm.
money, around what working looks like, around what being successful looks like. And it's like perpetual permission, like of
Yeah.
allowing yourself to do that. which is why it's so
Yeah.
powerful to be held or to be guided. Because like
Yes.
who, like, what am I doing? I don't know. You know?
Yeah, and honestly, like I have a similar story because honestly, without therapists, without coaches, I wouldn't be where I'm at
Oh, same.
today.
Yeah.
Same. And it's like people think about coaching and therapy as like, oh, like you don't really need it, or I'm fine, I can do it on my own. But like, and if you've been doing the same thing over and over again in your life, and you're at a point where you're like, oh, I need to make major change, I don't know how, then it's so useful to have someone to guide you through that change because they've guided other people through that change and maybe have gone through it themselves. And they've been the few steps ahead of you that can kind of allow for more clarity, at least where you're at. So I think it's a beautiful path to be able to kind of lean into coaching and mentors because yeah, like it really does make a change. I remember one of my best friends, I was in like my corporate career, and she was like, you keep talking about changing your career. I was in this career for 6 years. She's like, you keep saying you're going to look for another job, you're going to look for another job, but like you've been there for 6 years. What does it look like if you do something different? And she was actually going through a coaching program herself at that point, and I was like, what does different look like? And she's like, I have some, like, she's like, not me because I'm your best friend, I can't coach you, but she's like, I have some people in my program that would be cheaper and are really good. How about I connect you with a few of them and you see? And at that point I was like, you know what, you're right, I have tried looking for another job and going into different jobs and like just not sitting well with me and being stuck in the same pattern I was constantly in. And it wasn't until I finally hired that coach that I was like, oh, okay. Like at first, when I first hired her, I thought, I just need a new job. Like, I'm hiring you because I need a new job. What ended up happening after 6, 7 months of working with her was I didn't have a new job at the end of that period. But what I did do was I released the guilt of, being able to quit my job without anything
Hmm.
lined up and kind of just trusting.
Hmm.
I was like, you know what? I know that I'm at a point where I just don't even want what I have. I'm okay letting go now. And she helped me through that
Hmm.
letting go process. And things, again, like became abundant and flowed. And I was never lacking money after that because I kind of gained the trust in myself to realize that I have created everything in my life thus far. What's any different in the future? I can trust in that I am going to create a future that's the most beneficial for me. And that trust factor, it also seems like something that you built up through your pathway as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, trust is like the secret
Yeah.
ingredient, I feel like. Yeah, like, I mean, someone said this to me once. It's like anything, and Tony Robbins talks about this, right? Like, we're addicted to the known, and so does Joe Dispenza. Like, we're addicted to the familiar. And so that's why, like, a 9 to 5, where you can see all your potential promotions, all of your 401k, all of your benefits, like, we're drawn to it because it evokes a sense of safety in our nervous system because it's known or it's familiar. But like where the like your comfort zone, that little thing, that image, and where the magic happens is over here, right? And that's in the unknown and in the unfamiliar. And like in order to get something that you can't even dream of, that blows people's minds, that's not known, that's not normalized, that's like crazy wild magic, there has to be a relationship that's built with the unknown, with the unfamiliar, which is 90% of the work of
Hmm.
making any of it happen. And it's cultivating that sense of trust, it's regulating your own nervous system, and it's trusting in a higher power, it's trusting in yourself, it's trusting the process, it's knowing how to sit, and they call it like the void, right? Where it's like,
Yeah.
okay, well, that last chapter is kind of over, but the next chapter is not kind of like fully dropped in, but like, what am I doing? And it's holding yourself, backing yourself through that journey and that experience, and like trusting. And that requires us to like open our heart, to relax our bodies, to not hyper control. Like, there's so many aspects of it, but like true trust and true faith are like huge muscles. And one of my mentors
Key.
says, it's not faith and or trust until it looks like it's not working. Like, that's actually when it's faith and trust, not when you have
Yeah.
evidence all the time.
Yeah.
And it's like that is where the magic happens.
Yeah, yeah. When you're in that void or that magic dark period where like you gave everything up, now what? And you just got to keep trusting that all the decisions that you made were for your best self and like this vision that you're creating, because yeah, it can get really scary in that void. But if
Yeah,
you start to build that confidence each time, then you start to make even larger decisions and bigger risks, and then making that bigger vision of your dream life possible. So
exactly.
really cool.
100%.
Oh man, I can't believe we've already been chatting for a little bit of time.
I
Um,
know.
this has been so illuminating. Thank you so much for sharing your story. I think that this is going to be so inspiring to a lot of people that are also going through major life transitions, and having debt that is scaring them into staying or into their comfort zone. So I think that your journey is just so inspirational. Thank you. I want to close off with a few questions that I asked to everyone. So, as you've been in Bali, and I know that we met through co-working office. How have you met your most meaningful connections thus far as you've been traveling, whether that's in Bali or in Tunisia or other places?
I think in general, it's been the energetic of putting myself out there. And I know everyone has like a different energy type and how they connect with people, but I have taken a lot of inspired action to put myself out there. And so whether that's I'm going, like we met, for example, at a co-working lunch, right? I didn't
Hmm.
know anyone at the co-working lunch. I'm like, okay, I signed up for this co-working literally just to meet people, and there's all
Yeah,
these free events. I'm just gonna go, and I'm just going to
yeah.
go and I'm just going to trust, right? And so that's one example. Another example is there's a lot of Facebook groups. And so I'll post on Facebook groups and I'll say, I'm XYZ, the truth of who I am, what I do, what I like. If you're in the area, let's connect. And then even people that like my posts or don't comment on it, I'm like, hey, are you in this area? Would you like to meet up? And there's like a little, like, I have a initiating energy, so I like to take
Hmm.
action in that sort of way. But I guess there's like a willingness to be like rejected, you could say, because
Yeah.
of how much I'm putting myself out there. Of like, okay, well, I had that. Like, I went to a dinner the other night and I like connected with one of the people and no one else I was really vibing with. And I'm like, okay, but I don't make that mean something about me or about Bali or about this
Hmm.
town or whatever. And it's just the willingness to put myself out there over and over again, whether it's going to a live event, posting on a Facebook group, posting on a
Hmm.
WhatsApp group, and just like the willingness to be seen, I guess, and the
Put
willingness
yourself out
to
there.
be
Yeah.
rejected. Yeah. And I'm just like that's the only way, at least for me.
No,
And so
I
I'm
think
like,
it's beautiful. Yeah. That's something that a lot of people get scared of, right? In terms of any part of life is the rejection. Like, what if it doesn't work out? What if I go and I don't meet anyone? Like 99% of the time, you go because you want to experience whatever that experience is. Being
yeah,
social in a group, going to a happy hour, seeing sunset, whatever it is that activity is, like I think you should go because you want to genuinely, and anyone else that you meet there and connect with becomes a bonus because you trust in yourself and you're doing things for you, and then everything else kind of just happens. um,
exactly.
yeah, and I mean, there's definitely plenty of times where I've gone to so many events, and it's like, no, like I didn't really like feel like I connected, or I didn't get to meet everyone, and it's not really about that. It's about making sure that you enjoyed yourself, and the universe has like a really fun way of bringing the right people to you. Like,
Hmm.
I went to an event in Canggu actually a few days ago, and it was a large digital nomad event on a rooftop, and there were probably like at least 100 people there. But we got stuck in line waiting for food, like for two
Mm.
hours,
Oh,
and I have this trust in myself now and connections that I know that if I was supposed to meet anyone at that meetup, I'm going to meet them eventually. Maybe that just wasn't the
yeah.
time. So then I ended up going to like a nightclub actually the day later, and a couple girls on the dance floor were like, "Hey, were you at that digital nomad meetup
Oh my gosh.
yesterday?"
Yes, I love
And I was
that.
like,
Yeah.
it is a dark dance floor at like
Yeah.
1 a.m. right now. Yes, yes, I was at that digital nomad meet, and then ended up connecting with them on Instagram. But it's just so funny because it's like trusting that if you're putting yourself
Yeah,
first and going to the things that light you up and putting yourself out there, and just having that knowing that like you are a great person, you're a great person to connect with, and then exuding that energy, then like the people will find you, the people will come up to you, and the universe will give you the opportunities to connect with the people that you're supposed to be connected with. So I think that that's a
exactly.
really good tip.
And that's a trust again. That's like
Yeah,
at the
that's
core
like our
of
theme. Yeah.
everything. Yeah.
Trust. And then kind of going back into your play style of kinesthetics, which is so funny because now we are kind of able to see the theme in your
Yeah.
life of of like, oh, I loved, being in my body and doing these kinesthetic things, jumping on trampoline. Maybe there's something in like the fact that that became your career for a bit. And
Mhm.
so now, knowing that, are there ways that you play right now in your life? Like, how do you incorporate play on a day-to-day basis?
I think that I haven't been doing this as much lately, but throughout a lot of my adult life, especially like through the period of career change, like I'm really big into dancing. Like dancing has been
Mm,
super playful and super healing for me. And I think that also goes back to being in my body. And I
mhm.
think in a more micro sense, I am just someone who plays like on a day-to-day, moment-to-moment basis, more like
Yeah.
using imagination. And so a really fun thing I do with my clients is like, I don't know if you've seen the Barbie movie, but if
Yes, of
for,
course.
okay, yes. So for anyone who hasn't, there's like a lot of different genres of Barbie. There's like weird Barbie and adventure Barbie and like classic Barbie and whatever. And I just start, and I'm like a big cartoon person, animated person, imagination focused, forward. And so a lot of the times, like if you're not in the mood to do something, you kind of just personify yourself as Barbie. And so if you're
Mm,
just having like a day, like I'm sad Barbie right now, but like I'm sad Barbie and I'm gonna do whatever sad Barbie needs to
yeah.
do. And then like it's fine because then I'm gonna be CEO Barbie and then I'm gonna be
Yeah.
Gym Barbie, you know? And so it's not making these periods of, or if you know you need to like get stuff done, right? But you're not feeling disciplined and you're like, okay, well, I just gotta put on CEO Barbie for a little bit
Ah,
and then I can go be like, I don't know, sleepover Barbie, whatever.
yeah.
And so but like
Sleepover Barbie sounds fun.
yeah, like, right when you're really not in the mood to do work, you're probably in the mood to, like, be sleepover Barbie, like
Yeah.
snacks and movies and nails and face masks,
Yeah.
and so, anyway, I use that kind of element of imagination and combining that. It's kind of a mindset mixed with embodiment, right? Like how you're actually showing up in your body, but also how you're self identifying mentally. And by just using this little like exercise of being Barbie, and like we're podcast Barbie right now, and then I'm
Yeah.
gonna go be, yeah. And so I think that's a playful way that I use that with myself and I speak to
Mhm.
myself in that way. And I also offer that to my clients. And I talk about this with my friends too. Like, the
Yeah.
Barbie is ubiquitous.
Yeah, I love that. No, I want to step into different versions of Barbie now, because
Yes.
I do something similar, but like I name different like feelings of like, okay, you're
Mhm.
Barbara. We don't want to be Barbara right now, but like
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
like it just feels more easy to
Yeah.
name them different Barbies. So I like that exercise. That's a
Mhm.
really great tip. And one last tip that you have for anyone that's considering solo travel for the first time, but maybe a bit hesitant, or um, what advice would you give them?
So I mean, this is more of a logical, practical share or action step, but
Mhm.
I would just, and I know you talk about this a lot, but I would really develop a grounding practice. And I don't know if you're
Mm.
necessarily going to develop it until you actually take the plunge, because you do have to develop a grounding practice no matter where you're at in life. But being abroad is very, very different. And so for
Yeah.
me, I have, certain like journal things I do, I have certain prayer I do. And something that's been profoundly grounding for me is I have a fiction book that I listen to on tape. And I know people receive information differently, but is something that's kind of like an anchor to lean on for support if you kind of feel yourself going into a weird space or into a space that you could maybe easily spiral or start to put meaning to or stories around that aren't supportive. And this can be a myriad of things. I also have like voice noting relationships with a few of my friends from back home. So no matter the time zone, I can express myself and vocalize if I want to. I have my audiobook,
Nice.
but it's engaging your senses in order to
Yes.
ground yourself, right? So that could also be like a breathwork practice. I go to the gym. I don't really count that though, because for me to ground, I need to be able to do it like right here, right now. And so I kind of get into if I have like my phone or my body device, but I think developing any sort of grounding ritual for you and maybe having more than one because you might not always be in the mood for all of them is super,
Yeah.
super supportive because when your environment is constantly changing, when the people around you are changing, when your environment, like as a
Yeah.
geographically where you're at in the world is changing,
Yeah.
having some sort of constant with you versus you is powerful.
That is so powerful. And that's such a great advice because, yeah, as you're in kind of chaos mode, like the anxiety, I think there's a lot of conversations about like, oh, like you kind of have to just not be anxious if you're going to do it. And it's like, okay, but how can I not be anxious? Like, let's
That's
go, let's go a step
impossible.
deeper. Yeah, exactly. Your anxiety is just telling you that, there's just some feelings or things that you need that like is alerting your body. And regardless of the trigger, like how are you going to handle that? And I think that the grounding practices are just so like empowering because in that moment, if you have your toolkit of whatever it is like breath work or five senses or meditation, then you can just immediately de-escalate your nervous system. And I think that that's like the most helpful tip actually, so thank you for sharing that.
Exactly. Yeah, of course.
Perfect. So I'm going to close out now. I know you have your business and you're helping your clients on mindset and imposter syndrome. Can share some ways that people can contact you, the type of people that you generally work with, and the services that you offer?
Yeah, so the best way is probably Instagram. I'm on every social media. You could find me on TikTok, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, literally. But Instagram has been a bigger focus for me since being abroad. And there'll be a link, but it's Alexandra Trev. And then I have a link in my bio with all of my free and paid resources. And so I have free workbooks on building your online business, on calling in soulmate clients, on nailing your niche, on getting into your body, shifting anxiety, a masterclass on overcoming imposter syndrome, a lot of things to help you get into the nuances of following soul, following your passion, and making money doing it, and creating your dream life full time. And then I have a few online courses, but the most powerful way to be in my space in my world is working one on one, and that's with an application also with that link that's in my bio on my Instagram. And so if you have any questions, you can message me, DM me, and everything should be right there for you.
Perfect. Thank you so much for sharing your story and all the tips and advice for the Navigator audience. Yeah, I loved our conversation and I'm so happy to have you on.
Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for having
Okay.
that we met and the serendipity.
I know. Yeah, the universe again, it brings people together that need to be connected. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode of the Travel Not to Escape podcast. I hope you found our conversation inspiring and insightful. And if you're ready to take the next step in your journey of self-discovery through intentional travel, I invite you to join our vibrant and supportive community of solo female travelers over on Facebook. Inside our community, you'll find like minded women from all walks of life sharing their stories, experiences, and tips on how to make travel a transformative part of your life. It's a safe space to ask questions, seek advice, and find inspiration. To become a part of this incredible community, simply search for Travel Not to Escape on Facebook groups, or you can click the link in the episode description. I can't wait to welcome you into our tribe of fearless travelers. Remember, your journey of self discovery begins with that first step. So don't hesitate, join us today, and let's embark on this adventure together. Until next time, keep exploring, connecting, and playing, and safe travels, navigators.